My name is Tony Gratton, and this is my wife Mary, our little grandson. This is a great occasion. We have the next president of the United States. Also, this is Juneteenth. Something for us to celebrate. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to my vice president of all my operations, Mr. Joe Linson, as he's going to introduce our former mayor. Thank you guys for coming.
I want to take 1 minute to say something about Tony Gratney and Mary before I introduce our special guest tonight. Tony's been in San Antonio more than a decade now, and because he came from Houston, he was coming from the east going west, so the first thing he saw was the east side of San Antonio. And he fell in love with the east side. He'll tell you that. And you see the mansion over here. But after he got here and got all settled in, he needed a mate. So he reached over into Harlandale and found Mary Angano. Brought her on board. He fell in love with Mary. And the rest of that's history. Two of the greatest people I've ever met. They just believe in helping, assisting. She owns a concierge coffee company. You know Tony for Tony G's Soul Food, of course. She also is catering and bar service. She's on the Riverwalk, the first African-American firm down there with the Olympus sub shop. And so he's just a dynamic leader, bottom line, wants to get things done. So how about it for Tony and Mary? It gives me a great pleasure and a unique honor to introduce an amazing and extraordinary human being. Julian Castro was born just a couple miles west of here, in the shadows of the Alazan Apache housing complex. Went to elementary school, he and Joaquin, his twin brother, to Fourier Middle School, Thomas Jefferson High School. He went on to Stanford University. Degree in poli-sci, my old major, so I got 11 after that. And then he went on to Harvard Law, got a law degree. Now, that would have been enough. But as I said, he's an extraordinary human being. So what he did, he comes back home, runs for city council in District 7, wins that seat, served well. The decade of downtown, you see what's going on around San Antonio and downtown, you can thank Julian Castro for that. He started that process. SA 2020 and all that goes on with that. And then he was tapped by President Barack Obama to run the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We know it as HUD. He was secretary up there. The Promise Zone neighborhoods here in San Antonio, more than $50 million was put back into this community as a result of his work. He connected the housing authorities, got them connected electronically, and also broke up the segregation of housing authorities. And so I can sit here all day long and talk about him, but you didn't come to hear me talk about it. You want to hear from the man. I give you the next president of the United States of America, Secretary Julian Castro.
Buenas tardes. How are y'all doing? Well, first of all, let me just start off by saying a huge gracias, thank you to Tony and to Mary and to Gael also. Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause for hosting us. Thank you for having us in your beautiful home tonight. And of course, a big shout out to Joe. Thank you very much for that introduction, but more importantly, thank you for your leadership in this community over the years. Your entrepreneurialism has been an inspiration to a lot of folks. And it was great as a city councilman and then as a mayor, watching you succeed. I also want to give a shout out to Dwayne Robinson. Where's Dwayne? For helping put this together. It's fantastic to see so many people that I had a chance to work with with from the time that I was a pup city councilman when I was 26 years old, and sometimes even before that. I see Jolynn Burley here. Jolynn was at the city when my mother was working at the city. She was a lot younger. But somebody that I have tremendous respect for and has served as a role model for so many folks. Thank you, Jolynn, for your support very early on and for helping with this event as well. I also want to give a quick shout out to Robbie Greenbloom, who is my former chief of staff and visiting from DC, and he's always somewhere in the background of every campaign that I've done. And I see so many people who were there in 2005. Y'all remember when I ran for mayor in 2005? Yeah! I didn't quite win that time, but you know what? We won the East Side. I won that year, District 2, and there were so many people who are here today that were there back then. And so y'all have been with me, many of y'all, through thick and thin, in losing and in winning. And I truly appreciate you being here today. We have a big week coming up. I made the debate. Woo! Thank you to everybody who made their contribution, that, whether it was $5 or $50 or more than that to help us get on the debate stage. It made a difference. And I'm looking forward next Wednesday to being on that first debate night on NBC. I had a chance to speak earlier today with Pete Buttigieg and with Elizabeth Warren, and everybody's getting, ready, and I think we're going to have a good night. There are a lot of folks that don't know yet who I am, and we're going to have more than 20 million people watching that night. It's going to be a wonderful opportunity to introduce myself to a lot of Americans that are looking for their next president. When I go up there on that debate stage, I'm going to be thinking about our community here. Like many of y'all, I started in a single-parent household with humble beginnings. I'm a product of the public schools here in San Antonio. I know what it's like to struggle for my family to worry about whether we're going to be able to pay the rent or keeping the electricity on, taking the bus to school and to work. I know what it's like not to have any kind of success guaranteed and to have to work for that like y'all have. I also know what it's like to dream big and to feel like I've achieved my American dream. And like Joe and so many others in this room, to feel like that's what we want for everybody in this country, no matter who you are. It was the honor of my lifetime to get to serve this community as mayor of the city. And one of the first things that I did when I became mayor was that I understood how people had been left out, especially the African American community in San Antonio. I wanted to make sure that we focused in an unprecedented way on the east side of our city. That's why we focused and were able to get the Choice Neighborhood Grant, the Promised Neighborhood Grant. That's why we did the reinvestment summits. That I said back then, we're not just about reinvestment, but we're about investing in the east side to strengthen the east side for the benefit of people who live on the east side. And I'm proud of the record. In part because of that, we got the attention of Washington and of President Barack Obama. And I'd like to say, remind people that I got the call from President Obama on April 16, 2014. And it's not every day that you get a call from the president asking if you want a job. Tell people that I had just driven through the drive-thru at Panda Express. And you know how on your phone it says unknown or block call? It said private. And I picked up the phone, and it was President Obama. And so if you ever get a call that says private, hopefully it'll be me on the other end of the phone. But during my time at HUD, I had the chance to go to 100 different communities in 39 states, and to see the way that our country is grappling with issues related to housing, but not only that, everything that's connected to it. The fact that Where you live often determines what kind of an education your kid can get. Where you live often determines whether you have access to fresh food or not. What kind of job opportunities you have in life. Too oftentimes, how you're treated by the police. Right? And I'm running for president because I have a strong vision for our country's future. I believe that it's time for new leadership. And I believe that working together that we can become, in the years to come, the smartest, the healthiest, the fairest, and the most prosperous nation on earth. And so during this campaign, I've been visiting early states, Iowa, New Hampshire, but also I pledged to visit all 50 states. So I've been to places like Idaho. I haven't been to Hawaii yet. I want to get out there. But I've been to South Carolina, and I've been to Nevada, and I've been to Florida, and I've been to so many states, and a lot of the aspirations that I hear for our country are the same. And so I'm going to go out there and I'm talking about things like investing in universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. We got pre-K for SA done in San Antonio. Because of that, we have one of the best pre-K programs in all of the United States. I've been talking about improving public education. I've been talking about making sure that we have a healthcare system where everybody who wants Medicare can get it. Because I grew up with a grandmother that had diabetes. And right before she died, she had to have one of her feet amputated, which, as you all know, is very common for severe diabetics. She had Medicare that whole time. I want to make sure that those who are on it, that we strengthen it for them, and everybody who wants it can get it. And if you have your own private health insurance plan, I think that that's okay also. But what I don't believe is that anybody in the wealthiest nation on earth should ever go without the health care that they need. I also know that too oftentimes the color of your skin impacts the quality of the health care that you get. Just like you shouldn't have to be wealthy to stay healthy, you shouldn't have to be white to get good health care. Everybody should get excellent health care in this country. Have been talking about what we need to do to become the fairest country in the world. That we need to reform and reimagine our criminal justice system with sentencing reform, cash bail reform, doing things like legalizing marijuana and investing in diversion programs. So instead of people getting caught up in lower level crimes, right, we get them oftentimes the services that they need, the help that they need, whether it's healthcare services, mental health services, other services, so that they can go on and get onto the productive path that they want. I've also talked about police reform. I was the only candidate to release a plan on police reform. And y'all may have seen the Fox News town hall that I did the other day. Some people said, "Oh, why are you going on Fox News?" I said, I don't love Fox News, the organization. In fact, I think in a lot of ways it's been bad for our country. But I also said, I'm going to go on there and I'm going to tell the truth. What I said was that a couple of months ago I was in Charleston, South Carolina, a few blocks away from the Mother Emanuel AME Church. And I remember that Dylan Roof had gone in there 4 years ago and murdered 9 people. And then a few hours later, he was apprehended without incident, as he should be, and taken into custody and taken to trial and punished. But then I said, well, what about Eric Garner? And what about Laquan McDonald? And what about Stephon Clark and Jason Perrow and Tamir Rice and Michael Brown and Pamela Turner and Sandra Bland and folks like Antonio Arce in Phoenix? We need to make sure that no matter who you are in our country, that you're treated the same, regardless of the color of your skin. That's what reforming our justice system means. And if we're going to be the most prosperous country on earth, it means that everybody has to prosper. That we need to raise the minimum wage. That we need to do things like invest in affordable housing. One of the things that I was always proud of growing up in San Antonio was that I always thought that I could come back here and find a place to live, start a family, stay in my community. This community was always more affordable than the Bay Area that I'd gone to college in, or the Boston area that I'd gone to law school in. I'm sure some of the communities that y'all have lived in. That's changing. San Antonio, like a whole bunch of other cities, is getting more and more expensive. People are having to pay 30, 40, 50, 60% of their income in rent. Y'all see that happening right now. We need to make sure that we create enough affordable housing so that people who are middle class and people who are working poor are able to find a safe, decent, affordable place to live. I consider housing a human right, and that we should treat it like that. And that's why this week I released a housing plan that says we're going to put a housing choice voucher into the hands of all Americans who need it. And we're going to end homelessness in this country by 2028. And this is not just fantasy. During the Obama administration, because we worked on this, we reduced veteran homelessness between 2010 and 2016 by 47%. That means that we can keep making that kind of progress. And so during this campaign, I've said I'm not just going to walk the walk. I'm not just going to talk the talk. I'm going to walk the walk. We're going to be fearless. When other candidates didn't want to take up the issue of reparations, right? I answered that question. I said that we should do that I support Representative Jackson Lee and her legislation to set up a commission that would look at reparations and then make a recommendation to the president. So no matter what the issue is, we're going to speak to the America that we can become. And, I don't really want to take our country backward. I'm not much into making this country anything again. I want us to go forward into the future. With one exception, which is that I want to restore integrity and decency to the Oval Office. I got tested very early on in my tenure in politics. Some of y'all may remember when I was a young councilman, I came back home, I got a job at the biggest law firm in town. I was making $100,000 a year. I bought a house, I bought a car. I had a student loan payment that was like between $900 and $1,000 a month. And then I got elected to the city council, and at the time, the city council paid $20 The most that you could make was $1,040 a year under the charter. So everybody had another job, unless you were retired, and mine was at that law firm. Well, a few months after I got elected, the law firm got a client that wanted us to approve a land deal to build that golf course over the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. Remember the PGA Village?
Yeah.
Well, y'all may remember that I wanted to vote against it, and my constituents wanted me to vote against it. But since I was working at that law firm that represented the company that was trying to do the deal, under the professional rules of conduct for lawyers, you can't just go against the interests of a client. So on the one hand, my constituents were saying, hey man, are you going to represent us? And on the other hand, my livelihood, my ability to make that house payment and make that student loan payment and keep that car, basically depended on me shutting up, staying quiet, and calling it a conflict of interest. And so one day in January of 2002, after a couple of months of that, I walked into the law firm and I quit my job. And then I went and I voted against that deal back in 2002. And I think about that because before I ever went into politics, one of the things I worried about was that I would have to fundamentally change who I was to succeed. You know, you hear that politics can be dirty or corrupting.
Yeah.
That you have to play the game with certain people who always seem to get their way, whether it's at City Hall or the state legislature or in Washington, D.C. And I was proud that when that first test came, that I did the right thing for the people I represented. There's nobody that gets tested more than the President of the United States. And I want you to know that if I'm elected president, that I will work hard every single day to make sure that you and your family can have good health care when you need it, that your children and your grandchildren and the young people here today can get a good education in our country, and that all of us can have good job opportunity. no matter who we live or who we are. And that we make you proud. So thank you very much for being here. I hope that y'all will be ambassadors for this campaign in the months to come. Y'all see the polls right now, right? Sometimes I don't like to look at the polls. But you know what? I'm not the first candidate that started out low in the polls with the potential to actually win. The other day, I looked at this poll from June 22nd, 2015, and the headline on it was that Jeb Bush had surged to a new lead in the 2016 election. He was at 23%, and Donald Trump, that had just announced, was at 1%. Marco Rubio was like at 14, and Ted Cruz was at 4. In 1991, Bill Clinton started out at 3%. So it is not uncommon at all to start at the bottom and rise to the top. So I'm gonna keep working hard, doing what our families do every day, which is to work hard and to scrap and to take advantage of every opportunity that we can. And I'm confident that by the time that Iowa caucuses on February 3rd, that we can win the Iowa caucus on February 3rd. And win the Texas primary on March 3rd. And then go on and become the nominee. And, you know, a couple months ago, somebody asked me, well, if you win, what are you going to do? What's the first thing that you would do? And I said, well, the first thing that I would do is that I would sign an executive order that recommits us to the Paris Climate Accord so that we meet again on climate change, because that's a long-term threat. But I said my favorite moment would come before that, earlier in the afternoon, when it's customary for the incoming president to usher out the outgoing president. I'll be there with my wife, Erica. I know many of y'all have met. Yeah, Lynn says y'all will all be there. And with our daughter, Karina, and our son, Christian. And I can imagine being there with Donald Trump and Melania Trump, getting ready to usher them off on the White House lawn. The helicopter will be out in the distance with the door wide open. And right before he leaves, right before he walks away, I'm going to tell him, adios. Already, and please contribute to the campaign, because that's the only way that we can win. I'm not taking any PAC money. I'm not taking any federal lobbyist money. That means I need you. I'm relying on you. So hopefully you can make a contribution, be ambassadors for this campaign, and you're going to see us keep getting stronger. Thank you.
Secretary, you want to take a few questions? He's going to take a few questions. The last 3 questions, I'll bring Maya up, his campaign manager. So go ahead and shoot.
All right, any questions?
Any questions? Secretary.
I got a question. Sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Most importantly, as president.
Listen up, everybody.
Most importantly, as president, there's a guy in Toronto named Kawhi Leonard. Should he go to the Clippers and return to the Spurs?
No, you know, I wish he were here in the Spurs. They asked me upstairs in a podcast, like, what's your feeling about that? And, you know, this may not be the popular answer I say as a San Antonian, but, you know, I'm actually kind of glad for him. Like, he's a phenomenally talented guy. You know, I like his work ethic. Obviously, something happened here in the Spurs. I wish it hadn't. But I was actually glad to see the rise of a new superstar. So, you know, I'm a fan. Yeah.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Welcome home. I did want to visit with you about what you might have planned for what we're dealing with the opioid epidemic. And I really kind of hate that we're focusing on the opioid, because we recognize we've had drug epidemics of every numerous times. Yes. This morning I was on a phone call with West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Nevada, and Arizona about strategies that they're just throwing their hairs out, and their attorney generals are literally trying to figure out how they can sue the pharmaceuticals. we need a better plan, and I wanted to just know if you've, I would love to work with your staff on coming up with some solutions and how to address some of that, but what do you think?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for bringing that up, and you're right, especially when I travel to everywhere from New Hampshire, which has been hard hit, to Iowa, to several other states. You know, I have heard a lot. I've heard an earful from families about the opioid crisis, and would love to work with you on that. During the course of this campaign, we will put out something more detailed. But you know, basically, I want to make sure that we get resources into the hands of local communities so that they can provide the treatment for people that is needed to combat that crisis. As you may remember, during the Obama administration, there was a task force that worked on this.
Yes.
Part of what they worked on, in addition to looking at what kind of resources would be needed, is also making sure that opioids are prescribed correctly. That's important because we want to make sure they're not overprescribed, but at the same time, ensure that people who actually need them still get them, right? Because there are legitimate reasons that somebody would be prescribed one of these opioids. So I think we can continue that. I think that we need to invest those resources in our healthcare and community clinic system so that people can get those resources. We need to ensure that first responders are well trained in how to step in and be as effective as possible in responding. And this is somewhere where I connect the dots of our a healthcare crisis like this to an issue like immigration. You know, about 2 months ago now, we had the largest bust of fentanyl in our nation's history. It was 254 pounds of fentanyl that came through a port of entry in Arizona. It didn't come through the middle of the desert. There's not anything that a wall would have done. These people tried to bring it in a truck or something through a port of entry. So I say, if we want to be smarter about border security, what we actually should be doing is investing in more technology and personnel for our ports of entry.
Yes.
You know, whether it's land-based or it's off the water, to catch more drug trafficking and human trafficking that happens.
And they're very tied.
For sure. And so, you know, you may have noticed, those of y'all who have read some of the policies that we put out, that when we put these things out, they're comprehensive and they look at all the ways these dots are connected. And I do think that as we approach and try and solve this opioid epidemic, that we have to be thoughtful like that about how these dots are connected, including with something that, you know, folks don't often think about, like what we're doing at our ports of entry.
Julian.
Yes.
Okay, so one of your the other candidates, Bernie Sanders, on one of his interviews he did a few days ago, he had brought up, like, you know, democratic socialism, and then he said, like, the president currently, Donald Trump, he also takes in socialism, it's more corporate socialism, and I like hearing, like, other, like, people think about, like, what they think about, like, you know, people that bring against them, their opinion on, like, other, you know, candidates. So, like, how do you feel about, like, that?
Well, I mean, I applaud Senator Sanders for, you know, bringing forward in 2016 a lot of the policy issues that we're, you know, dealing with today. For instance, if you compare 2020, the Democrats of 2020 to 2016, you know, a lot more of the Democrats are embracing making sure that Medicare is available to everybody. Now, you know, we have different views of how we can best achieve that. I've said, for instance, that we should make sure Medicare is available for everybody, but if somebody has a private health insurance plan that they want to hold on to, that they should be able to do that. But I think of also the way that over the years he's called for greater accountability for Wall Street. And also making sure that people at the very top pay their fair share, and wealthy corporations. A good example of that is that y'all may have seen, like a month ago, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, it was reported that Amazon made more than $11 billion in profit last year, and they didn't pay any federal tax. And there were 60 big American companies that were written up that were profitable, companies we know, household names, that paid zero in federal tax. And some of them actually had a negative tax liability. They were, you know, they had credits, or they're basically getting something back. How is it that you and your family end up paying more in federal tax than Amazon? And I think that Senator Sanders has been an important voice in putting some of those issues right at the very top. And so, you know, we have our agreements and our disagreements, but I think that he's added something to the national conversation. Of course, if I didn't believe that I would be the best candidate running, I wouldn't be running. And so, even though I applaud Senator Sanders, I also believe that I bring my own experience, including one of the things that distinguishes me. I'm one of the few candidates with executive experience, you know, having served as a cabinet secretary, having served as the mayor of San Antonio, and understanding how we get things done. Because I think it's great to have a plan, but it's another thing to have a track record of actually getting things done. And so I'm looking forward, if I'm elected, to getting things done for our country.
Let's get a couple more and then we'll
Now,
hear.
the question I want to ask you about is something that really bothers me. My family, we're a bunch of immigrants. We came over from the West Indies, and our grandparents worked very hard and instilled work and a work ethic and education to move forward. And as a family, we've all succeeded. I hear Mr. Trump talking about immigrants and how they're bringing drugs and violence into this country. Talk to me about your plan.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is a question about my immigration plan. So my plan basically says that instead of the cruelty that we've seen from this administration, separating little children from their families, the fact that 6 children have died in U.S. custody over the last year. It had been 10 years since a child died in U.S. custody, a migrant child, and now 6 of them have died in the last year. Think about that. The fact that he tried to pass this ban on Muslims in this country just because of your religion, didn't want you to be able to come to the United States. I say there's a better way to do this. So under my plan, we would respect the asylum claims of the people who are coming here. We would invest in an independent immigration judiciary, this court system with enough judges and support staff to actually go through the backlog of asylum claims so people are not waiting for years and years in limbo like they are now. We would put undocumented immigrants, as long as they haven't committed a serious federal crime, on a pathway to citizenship, right? Our dreamers, but also their parents and other undocumented immigrants. We would get to the root cause of the challenge, which is, I've called for investing in a 21st century Marshall Plan, basically supporting and partnering with Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala. Because why would a mother come more than 1,000 miles on a dangerous journey with a 6-month-old infant? Because they're desperate. Because they can't find safety and opportunity in their home country. I want to make sure that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of having to come to the United States and try to find that. The last thing I'll say on that is, like, y'all remember, right? Last month we had 144,000 people that came to our southern border. I understand why people would be concerned, right? They say, what's going on here? This was not the first time that this happened. This happened, you may remember, in 2014 when we had a surge of people coming. So the moment this guy became president, Trump became president, he knew that this was an issue. If I had been president, the first thing that I would have done if I were serious about immigration is to actually go and partner with those countries to stem the flow of people coming. We would have already taken up 2.5 years of productive activity to get down the road on that, instead of wasting it the way that he has. He's been a total failure on this issue of immigration because he doesn't want a solution. He just wants a circus so that he can get elected. I would actually provide a solution.
All right. Okay, there's one more question. Then we're gonna, right here, I got this guy.
We have a young voter here. What are your thoughts or policies, potential policies on the student loan crisis?
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing that up. About 5 weeks ago, I released my plan for education that includes student loan debt relief. When I got out of law school, I owed about $81,000 in student loans. Wow. And so we actually, and I advise you to check it out on juliancastro.com, we actually create a sliding scale that is detailed there on how we would treat student loan debt for people to be able to, still be in a position to own a home, right? To go out and buy a home, to pursue their dreams and not be saddled with $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 of student debt. That deals with people that currently have student debt. I think just as importantly, though, part of my education plan is to pursue tuition-free public state universities, community colleges, and job training and certification programs. And this is not radical. This is something that we used to do. I remember Robbie telling me at the University of Texas when he went there. He's older than I am. I remember Robbie telling me, and others have told me, that when they went to UT, that, you know, it was $100 or something, maybe a little more per credit hour per semester for tuition. The University of California system was tuition free through the late 1970s. So this isn't something that's radical and we've never done it in America. We used to do it, but the thing is that we actually need to do it now more than ever before because jobs require more skill and knowledge than ever before, and because we're competing against countries around the world that are producing tons and tons of well-educated people that we have to collaborate and compete with. So we need to make sure everybody has that higher education opportunity. It would address that, and then also student loan debt relief once people are out.
Let's get Maya.
Yeah, Maya, so
let's get Maya Rubin up.
let me just say, Maya's our campaign manager, and we work together at HUD. When we were working together at HUD, one of the things that I said was that wherever I went, I would be lucky if Maya was there as well, and that we could continue to work together. You know, at the time, I thought that might be in another Democratic administration. But that's not the case. So this is the next best thing, and maybe a better thing.
There you go.
So I'm so happy that she's our campaign manager and doing a great job. And I turn it over to Maya Rubin.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. For everyone I haven't gotten a chance to meet, yes, I'm Maya. I hopefully will get a chance to say hi to you before we leave for the evening. I am actually the third Black woman to have had this particular job on a presidential campaign. Which is incredible. I mean, I will say I feel like that number is low, but I know we're gonna bring it up. I know we're gonna get a lot more Black women getting into politics and holding a number of positions, this one included. So, but one of the things that I always think is funny is that when people meet me, they sort of treat it like they're putting a puzzle together, right? So they'll hear some of the stuff that Secretary Castro talks about, and then they meet me and they say, "Oh, that's why he put out a lead plan and went to Flint," or "That's why he talks about police violence," and you know, it's because he has a Black woman campaign manager. And look, I will, as a general rule, take credit for whatever you want to give me credit for. But I'm going to be absolutely honest. He doesn't do those things because I work for him. I work for him because he's the kind of person who will go on Fox News and name Black men and women who have been killed by police. Because years after the Flint crisis, when a lot of people stopped talking about it because it stopped being sort of the political hot button issue, he went to Flint and rolled out a plan that would take seriously the environmental racism that really is responsible for the lead poisoning that is happening, not just through water like it did in Flint, but very often just in houses. This is something he dedicated himself to at HUD. We worked really hard on, and now we have a plan that would eliminate lead as a public health crisis. When he talks about education, he talks about college affordability, but he also remembers that the fact of the matter is a lot of the times the thing standing between our communities and college isn't just affordability, it's the fact that there's an achievement gap. So he's talking about universal pre-K. There are a lot of folks just aren't making it to graduation. So he's talking about school to prison pipeline and making all public schools actually investing in them, making sure that folks are getting the resources and education that they need to get to that next step so they can stand on the stage at the end of it and then make a decision about how affordable college is, right? That the order that people put that in is just reversed. I wouldn't work for somebody that I had to talk into stuff like that. The reason he said, "I want her to come with me," and I said, "I will quit jobs, I will come, I will do whatever you're going to do," is because I never feel like in order to work for a campaign like this, I have to compromise my commitments to any type of justice, especially racial justice, and that's really, really important to me. I think you're going to see a lot in this cycle. People have been emphasizing diversity, diverse staffs, and that's been a bigger deal than it's ever been, which is so cool. But I think that something that comes with that is there's sort of an unspoken job that staffers of color have to do, and a lot of times it is essentially running interference for their bosses. The boss says something, and now we're going to put our staffers of color out there to essentially apologize for it. I am very grateful that I get to be proud every day of my boss. I think this is something that we know, and that is that if you're going to run a campaign that's going to center our issues in our communities, it is not going to catch on at the same rate as a lot of other campaigns. So we really do need help. Secretary Castro talked about it as being ambassadors. I think that's a great way to look at it. One of the things I'm really hoping that we can do is just make sure that folks, when you get a chance to hear him, hear the way he talks about it, hear how genuine he is about these issues, make sure that folks know about it, right? He's going to be on that debate stage at the end of the month. I think a lot of people are going to tune in. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people do not start seriously following politics in, June of 2019 before 2020 elections. So it really is, it's the conversations we're going to be having with our friends and our families. So, when this kind of stuff comes up, just, mention the stuff that he said today that made you nod your head. Mention the stuff that made you say, all right, I'll go check that out, and make sure somebody else checks it out too. He's already qualified for the first 2 debates. He will be on the stage in June. He will be on the stage in July. But after that, we have to qualify again. And the DNC has basically just doubled all of our metrics.
Listen close to this.
We have to get, in order for him to qualify for the next set of debates, we have to get 135,000 unique donors. We are a little over halfway there, mostly because that's how we qualified for the first 2, right? So we're now, we just need to make sure we're getting his name out there. It can be $1. It literally just is a unique donor. And one of the things I think we're going to have to, as a number of people, as voters, as a party, really have a conversation about how much power we want to give to this idea of asking people to give money, again, like I said, this early in a process, right? Because there are a lot of people for whom that's not how they show their support. This isn't the time they start watching, and I think that does disproportionately impact our communities a lot of times. I think that's a bigger conversation. In the meantime, more than anything, what we need is just for people who his message is resonating with to talk to their people and to make sure, go online, go to juliancastro.com, give what you can, and tell somebody else to do the same thing, because that's how we're going to make sure that he stays in this debate and these issues stay in this debate. He made a comment about the fact that he answered that question on reparations. Reparations is now an issue in the 2020 campaign. You can't be a serious Democratic candidate without being willing to say, yes, I will appoint a commission to study reparations, which is the bill everyone has been pushing for years and years, and now all of a sudden it is something people have to say in order to get taken seriously. That is because the way he's decided to run is with that fearlessness, that he's going to speak truth to power, that he's not going to back down from tough issues just because they're tough. And we will lose that if he does not stay in that, right? These issues, he is the one moving the field on these issues, and so we need to keep that going. So please give what you can. Come chat with me after. I'm serious about that. I will get you, if you want to get more involved, we can have you volunteering. Come chat with me. I've got cards. We will get you as linked up to this campaign as you want, because we're going to have, but in order to get there, we're going to need to bring a lot of people with us. So seriously, thank you.
Before I come up, what is a unique donor?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I'm saying unique donors, what it just means is an individual person, right? So if you've already given to us, thank you. We are grateful to you. Of course you can keep giving, but you won't count toward this number. We need new people. So that's why I'm saying go out to your networks and bring folks in. So, all right. And with that, thank you.
How about tonight?
So I want to begin by, of course, firstly thanking Tony and Mary for your hospitality. Thank you so very, very much. This morning and yesterday morning, Tony called me at 7:30 a.m. Julian, just to say, Diet Peach Snapper. So he has called me each morning. But I want to thank Tony and Mary for their hospitality. I want to thank Joe Linson for the opportunity to put this on with him. And then I'm going to thank each of the individuals who were a part of our co-host committee, I want to make sure that I thank you for your contribution in helping us make this a success. So I want to thank DeMonte Alexander, Eric Akins, Henry Boone, Brian Chase, Frank Dunn, I know Frank is around there somewhere, Kabaya Factory, Paul Foster, I saw Paul come in, Leo Gomez, James Heck, Charles Johnson, my man, Derek Detail Johnson. Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you for the podcast and everything. Thank Guylin for all of his help as well. I want to pause before I forget, and I want to thank Uche and his wife, Chris. I want to thank you very, very much. You took care of handling the run of show and everything, and I said, you just take care of it, and you work closely with Maya on that. So I really do thank you for that. And then I want to thank Michael Lackey, Cassandra Littlejohn, Jalen, thank you very much. Elliot Lee, I believe Elliot's still here somewhere. Jean Merck, Dr. Morris Striblin, I saw Doc come in, Anita Starks, Beverly Weiss Davis, of course, thank you very much, Beverly. Reggie Williams, and lastly, Travis Wilshire. I want to thank each of you all for your contribution and your support, because when we talked about doing this fundraiser, we set a goal, and we could not have achieved it without those co-hosts. So thank you individually very much. The final remarks I want to make, so I didn't take the time to write anything down, Julian. What I did was I grabbed my book. So the first thing I want to do is I want to call out Robbie Greenbloom for being such a good friend that when I got my book, I said I want Julian to autograph it. He said, get it done on your own. So, and then I better pause real fast. My mother is here. Thank you, Mom, for coming here. And my two brothers are here as well. But let me say this real quickly, because we had some individuals that as we reached out to them to help financially support in this endeavor, they asked questions about Julian. They asked questions specifically about what he has done with the African American community. And I felt a little guilty. Here I am, I've had the opportunity to work for Julian and Joaquin, actually Joaquin first. And I guess I didn't do a good enough job of telling that story. I don't see Carrie Clack here, but Carrie and I were two individuals that had the opportunity to go work for Joaquin, and then we got a chance to spill over and work with Julian. And I remember when he first became mayor, and he hired Robbie as his chief of staff, Robbie really quickly called me and said, hey, Julian's thinking about doing something on the east side. We want to put together some summits. So, I mean, the first thing right out of the bat, he was doing things on the east side. Even through SA 2020, we did a lot of things to try to focus on the east side. Then you come and you got Choice and Promise. There were opportunities to do Choice and Promise on another side of town, but he threw his support behind doing it on the east side. Two quick stories. Number one is, so when he became mayor and Robbie was his chief of staff, I hope I don't get Robbie in trouble. So I had this password that I could call into the mayor's office, and I could have access to his schedule, and if I thought it was important enough, I could arrange meetings. The very first meeting that we arranged, and I didn't do it very often, and I see Reverend Price in here, and I think it was Reverend Price that called me, if I'm not mistaken. I'm certain he did, and they wanted to talk about having Jillian have that position at CPS Energy permanently and stuff. So, I mean, there's no way around me not being able to give a testimony about how important it was for him to do things within the African American community, and having had an opportunity to be a part of that, I say thank you. You didn't have to put that faith and trust in me. And then they also called me, Dr. Striblin, Robbie had called me one day, and it was about the appointment for the San Antonio Housing Authority, and they asked me my thoughts on that and on Dr. Strickland. And the only thing I could say, Doc, was I reminded Robbie, remember when we did the Black Jewish Latina Dialogue Group? I said Morris was supporting us then, so I think that's an excellent choice. So, you know, we always have an opportunity to try to do something on the east side as a way of supporting you, and I thank you so much. If there is anything that I can do by way of testimony or anything that I can do to help, I'm a living witness of your commitment, your trust in an individual that maybe you shouldn't have, but you gave me an opportunity otherwise. So with that, I want to just say again, thank each and every single one of you for making it here on this evening. I would remind you that it doesn't end here. It's a reason why that we had, and I think Joe McCall, we had a breakfast for Maya. And it's a reason why we did the podcast and we live stream. We want to try to help Julian beyond just the outreach of San Antonio, and social media will allow us to do that. So let's sing his praises, let's tell his story, let's give money, let's contribute, and let's help Julian become the next president of the United States.